anyone have anything they need to talk about?
Merry Christmas.
We'd like,
Merry
yeah,
Christmas, Happy Holidays, everyone.
I was gonna say the same. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year's to everybody. There was something that we did want to kind of touch a little bit on it. Hopefully, if in the future or now that we get more people joining, we can kind of all have an opinion about it. It's basically related to Lorenzo helped me out on here as well. It's basically related to um, the idea of BPs and registering, and then you know having some period of time that they've been unregistered, and then they register back again, and they still hold the same votes. What does everybody think about that? The reason why I'm saying this is because we found out that there's been BPs that haven't registered for weeks, well, for a long period of time, let's put it this way, and then they've suddenly registered again and they still have the same amount of votes, for example. Um, my opinion about that is that, at the end of the day, we're all trying to hold the chain, make the best for the chain. So we should have kind of the technology into good place. So I'm thinking like, should there be like some form of penalty for those that take longer to register back again, or anything like that? I don't know what everybody thinks about this, because we're still fairly new as a BP on Telos.
Well, the penalty is that when you unregister, you're no longer getting paid, right? So
But then,
as you're correct that you don't technically lose votes when you unregister, but the longer you're unregistered, the less likely you are to be voted, because when people go in to vote and you're not registered, if they try to vote for you as an unregistered BP, it won't let them vote. Does that make sense?
yeah, I understand that and it makes sense. But then what happens like to new BPs that start to join Telos, and they're doing all their efforts to go, across the leaderboard, and then you suddenly see that there's a new BP that suddenly appeared, and you've been putting effort, you've been maintaining your stuff so that it's working properly, you've been helping out on the chain, all of that, um, and then suddenly somebody just appears on the block, if that makes sense. um you know
What is there an example? And you're thinking that somebody new registered, like that had been unregistered for like months or something like that? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Who?
Sorry to interrupt. I'm Lorenzo, well, 40s mate, so, from Jesus. So the thing is that we, for example, have seen it, and well, I know that there might be reasons, but for example, we have had how they are called is the one from Crypto Lions. Like they were unregistered for more than a week, and they just came there, and they are like on number 43 right now. But with any changes, they can be, for example, on 42. And there are like a lot of, I have a really long list of a lot of potential BPs that still have been unregistered from, for example, September, and they still hold 21 million votes, for example. And 21 million votes today, it's like number 43, number 44, more or less.
yeah, the reason why we bringing this up is that we realized, because it's happened in our case, so we looked into it and we was like, all right, it doesn't, well, at least for our understanding, it doesn't really make that sense that we have BPs that are constantly, staying updated. They have their shit properly together, and then there's been a period of time that somebody has been registered, and then they register again, and what happens to the efforts that you've been putting, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So from my
because it
perspective,
bumps
speaking
you
as
down.
a relatively new Telos BP as well, we're also kind of trying to work our way up into the top 21. But I think a mechanism already exists, and it's voting. Token holders, if token holders continues to vote for somebody who has unregistered, either they see value in continuing to vote for that person, or they're not engaged. That's another problem. But I would say adding additional complexity to the way, to like voting. What do you want to call it? Voting. We have that ability that over time that voting decreases weight, or I guess new votes increase weight.
So
Yeah,
tell
We've
us,
got some.
Telos doesn't have that.
We've talked about it, I think, last VP call last
Yeah.
month came up of vote decay. I don't know if that would solve this too much,
And no, I don't think so.
but
I guess my point is like adding and continuing to add complexity to that mechanic. I would see is there's not a lot of value there, and maybe it doesn't. I don't know if it will accomplish much, and it's going to be there's probably bigger fish to fry.
If we were to turn voting decay back on, which came up last month, and in fact, JT asked me to add some data to our current native indexer, so we could kind of analyze, what that even look like, right? How big of a problem do we have with vote decay? I think we probably have a huge one, but that beside the point. I think if we had vote decay and people were aware of it, then people would be more encouraged to vote regularly. And if you're not registered and people are updating their votes regularly because of their awareness of vote decay, then you'd be left out if you're not registered when they vote. So that's one way to approach it if we had vote decay without doing much more than just turning vote decay back on. The other thing to consider, is like a week's not that long, but
right,
a month, many months. And I think to your point, Daniel, there's, the question I would ask you guys is what is a proposed solution? Because, there's ideas that maybe come to mind until you understand the complexity of the voting system and what you can actually do, in a transaction, what you can do at once when there's, thousands and thousands of voters, and recalculating all their vote weights is not an option. You can't, there's certain things you just can't do. So when somebody registers and they've been unregistered for a month, you can't just go like recalculate and affect everything at once. It has to be all done as you go. That's how voting works right now. Is like I vote and it can update 30 numbers. It can't update 30,000 numbers. So it has to be done as you go. So even vote decay, if we turned it on, wouldn't be retroactive. It would just be carried forward. As we go forward, vote decay would begin to happen. So I would
as a
just
token holder, voting for someone who's unregistered could be a legitimate strategy in how you want to allocate your votes. I wouldn't want to penalize token holders from reducing or removing the weight of their votes. Because we
the system doesn't let you vote for somebody that's not registered. Like that will fail.
I think
right.
Daniel means continuing to vote for someone who's unregistered.
Yeah, right. I've had that problem. Like I went to vote and I was like, "What's breaking?" And then I had to realize, like, "Oh, I was voting for somebody that's unregistered right now." And then I was like, "Well, maybe I don't want to vote right now." It was actually Persian Telos. I didn't want to unvote them. I knew why they were offline. They were improving their CPU. I knew they were coming back. I was like, "All right, I'll check back in a few days when they're back online, and then I'll update my votes."
And there are many reasons people vote for various VPs. Sometimes it's not for the things they're doing as a VP, but it's the other things they're doing around the ecosystem. And just because someone's unregistered doesn't mean necessarily that they're checked out.
Yeah, just to add to all that and what you say, Jesse, about JT making some more for more statistics on the indexer, I made like a little statistic because as we were also the ones that talked about the decay on the last month meeting, and we are looking to, like we said, push a proposal maybe on 2023 about that. I made like a little list of if you go to EOS Authority, you have like the more I think it's the 200 top voters or something like that, and we got like the ones that have like more than 500,000 Telos on their account. And right now, for example, I've made like they are 50, no, sorry, from 49, 24 voted, for example, before Big Iron, that is for the one that has, for example, 21 million votes, just got out from being a BP. And so that means that there are 20 million Telos that haven't been updated, so that their votes haven't been updated in a while.
Yeah, we have. I literally this morning got the SQL dump and gave it to JT. So we have. And I'm verifying. Kind of want to analyze it myself too. But we have like the last vote time and the vote weight of every voter at this point. And that I actually was saying I might just want to add to the indexer. You can look at api.explorer.telos.net and see the current APIs we have. You could look at that. You could put your BP in there and see who's voting for you. It'll come back with the top voters. You can put any BP in there. The intention is that we'll add that to the Explorer so that it could be used for anything. But you can go there and look, enter any BP name, see who the top voters are for them, like who's contributing to their rank. So you could look at that now if you want. But maybe we'll get the last vote time in there as well. So you could look at a BP and tell like, oh, look, here's who's contributing to their vote weight, and look at these big accounts haven't voted in a year or whatever. So again, going back to the vote decay and analysis of that.
Yeah, if we could have like the last time voted, it would be just really nice. Just for at least we can try and get from that list, we can just make some data thing, so we know, for example, if we implemented some type of decay, just to know, well, how much it would affect the situations that we have right now. So if that's possible, thank you.
Yeah, I mean that's what we're saying. That Jesse and I had this conversation just over the last couple of days, and like literally just before this meeting started, I sent him a database and he scrubbed it and added the vote times and sent it back to me. So that was just 10 minutes ago, and I haven't opened it yet, but it's
no problem. Perfect. So it's just that. So I think that it's clear.
Like I said, I think it might be worth it to include that in the API itself, so that the public can see that timestamp. But JT wanted it for analysis, and it took me all of 30 minutes to just supplement the database as is. So, but we could definitely, in fact, I'll just cut an issue on GitHub so it gets in the backlog, and eventually will be added there to that table.
Great. Yeah, it was just because we saw this and we saw what happens with the decay, and this is really the clear example of people not voting. So votes just being there in the, let's say, limbo there, just I don't know even if because I haven't checked that, but do they still count as if they were voting 30 VPs? If they voted 30 VPs and, for example, 10 on your registered, would it still be counting as voting 30 VPs?
Full vote weight. And again, this all goes back to like within the technology, when a BP unregisters, we can't go search thousands of rows and recalculate their vote weight.
Of course.
There has to be a trigger, right? So if that person were to stake or unstake, or there's certain things where we have an opportunity to recalculate their vote weight, but you can't go the other way and trigger thousands of updates in one.
Would there be a way that if a BP unregisters and a period of time passes, would there be a way for the decay to run faster or at a faster rate?
I think we are on the same problem about updating like thousands of
No.
records at a time.
Yeah, the way that vote decay works, just so everybody kind of, if you understand it, not that I expect everybody to understand the technical details, but you don't actually reduce people's vote weight. It's actually the opposite. So a fresh vote gets a additional bonus, if you can see it like that. So as time passes, if you voted last week and you had a multiplier of 1 and vote decay was 10% a week, then I vote this week, I would get a multiplier of 1.1, right? So my vote now actually is worth more than your vote was. Therefore, yours is decaying, but we're not actually changing your vote weight. We're just giving fresh votes more weight. So there's just a multiplier that's in the system that says, what's decay, and then a fresh vote just gets a greater weight. We don't actually go back and update old vote weights, right? We can't go update thousands of vote weights. What we can do is give each new vote, fresh vote, more power, which encourages people to vote more frequently and often. And that's what I was getting at when, responding to Daniel, that like, if we did have vote weight, we might encourage more frequent voting. And then if somebody's unregistered, then you have a choice. Do I want to let my vote weight not have a fresh bump, or do I want to remove this person that's not registered and then bump my vote weight? And then pick a 30th, as you said, because you don't get your full vote weight if you don't have 30 selected. So
Yeah, I think that obviously, as we have talked, if we put vote decay again, the only thing is that like all new votes would count more like from all the others that were done before we add again the vote decay. So like, well, I think it would encourage everyone, to be honest, if to vote if we do it even that way. So yeah.
I mean, there's definitely like the issue of voters not being engaged, which I think is the bigger part of this conversation that's not being talked about.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah, that seems like the actual route. It's if voters still are allocating the votes to people who have been unregistered for a long period of time, that's I see more of a voter engagement issue than we need to change the way votes are applied to BPs. And we don't want to be discouraging BPs from unregistering, because there's legitimate reasons for a fully engaged, active, valuable BP to unregister for whatever period of time. So I think we want to create a disincentive for that, because then we'll create other problems.
I don't think it's about engagement of the voters. I think it's more of like misconception education. I don't think that many users are aware that like you gotta continue voting, you gotta go back and look at the votes, you gotta see, well, you gotta first understand what a BP is, like things like that. It would be interesting.
It's a lot of work to like continue to.
It is.
I think that's part of. I know Douglas has been talking about implementing this new. I forget what it's called, but something like the OIG on Wax, where we have someone who putting out reports on the value add of EPs, and I think that's part of that solution is not at the protocol level, but ways to surface the value that people are bringing, encouraging, educating the community, giving them the tools to be able to make informed decisions in a decentralized way, like having
we do
rather
have
than
it's going around in the BP channel, and he's been doing a great job, and getting feedback from all the BPs.
Yeah,
in their opinion.
Yeah.
I think actually that came to mind earlier when Jesus was speaking, that this would be a great additional metric to. We should ask them to include that. Like if you've unregistered, although there's nothing wrong with unregistering for maintenance or for whatever you do, but just include that. It's not necessarily.
You should let us know why.
Yeah, and he could potentially solicit an understanding of why, and include that in the report, so that our voters can be more educated, and as they analyze their voting decision, they have that as a piece of information to base their decision on.
This reminds me a little bit the same problem we were trying to solve with Pomelo with the new collections feature we added. Feedback we were getting on Pomelo from the donors on Pomelo is, wow, there's lots of grants. How am I supposed to actually read all these grants and pay attention to who's actually delivering what they promised they're delivering. And as an average, participant, that's a lot to ask. And I think similar as a voter for a BP, having to constantly audit what BPs are doing, it's a big ask, especially if there's no incentives there for the voters. So again, making that easier, giving them the tools, and I think the work that's happening with this is a step in the right direction.
I think that's a good point to wrap this conversation point up at.
I just wanted to add one last thing before we change subjects. Okay, so Lorenzo and I have started some brainstorming around the idea of, proposing this to the community and hopefully, turn this into actual votes for everybody to vote. I was wondering if, I'm seeing that there's a lot of people here that have similar opinions or opposite opinions. I was wondering if we should all work together to kind of try to achieve something out of this, because this is the second time that we talk about it.
Hey guys.
We lost you. We lost Jesus. You dropped.
He's back, but muted. You're muted, Jesus.
Oops, sorry, I pressed the back button and I left the call. But yeah, I was thinking that if we could try to pursue this together as a whole, and see how it turns out.
So a couple thoughts on this. One is I did explain last time we had this meeting that like Jesse just said, it's really more of an inflation of new votes, not any kind of decay of old votes. It's misnamed. We see other chains that have voter decay, what we call voter decay, and they have the exact same problems with engagement that we have, right? So I don't think that looking at that is a cure-all for what for this voter engagement problem. I do think that having ongoing monitoring is important and will help. I think we need to get Daniel's presentation into a better format, which he's very open to. I think there's a simpler way to put the more effective stuff. He really wants to show his work right now, show all the work he's doing, as opposed to just providing a really solid report. But we have to, if we want this to continue, we have to get him paid somehow. Either so, he's been told by the TF that they want to get some kind of payment, and so he's been holding off on his Telos Works thing, but he hasn't been paid for this at all. And so I think that we just, if this is something we like and want to encourage, and I do think it's
the only reason he hasn't been paid is because he was trying to change the terms of his pay, and we settled that yesterday, and he will be paid before the end of the year for the work that he did in December.
That's great.
that
From my
I
point
know
of view.
that who was it? Telos UK or UK, mentioned Roger asked recently, and he said nothing had, there hadn't been any kind of funding. I know it's Christmas and stuff like that, but so I think that if we can show that some watchdogs can be part of the group, part of these solutions, and I think we can encourage it, but we have to figure out a way to fund it one way or the other.
Douglas, I think
But
you dropped out for a while there, maybe like 10 or 15 seconds. What I was saying was that the reason why Daniel has not been paid yet is because he was trying to change the terms that were agreed on in his job description originally for his pay. and that we came to terms on that yesterday, and he will be paid before the end of the year for the work that he did in December.
Okay, yeah, I hadn't heard that. Last I saw was Roger's message about that.
Quick question. As we are like, we were thinking and about how can we prepare the proposal of activating again the DK. Well, we will call it the DK because we call it the DK, but we already know that it's not a real DK. The thing is that
Well, sorry, what is that? What does that stand for?
what
DK?
the DK, the both DK.
Oh, decay. Okay, sorry. I thought it was like the letters D and the letters K.
Sorry.
I apologize.
Sorry, I'm Spanish. English, it's not my native, but
No. It was my fault. I
no
get it.
problem. So
Sorry.
the thing is that it's not. It's what we have always talked about, and we talked it last month, and we are talking it now. The problem, I think, it's not the DK in what it stands for. It's what it's encouraging people to vote, because maybe if no one votes, the DK it's not going to change. How much a vote does count doesn't change. So the thing here is, I know that there are other blockchains that for encouraging people to vote. For example, I think that this was something on Telos, I think, because we are relatively new here, but you needed to vote in order, for example, to get Rex. I don't know if that was a thing on Telos or not, but would that be?
So none of those things will actually work, is our experience. So first of all, if people need to vote to get Rex, they'll vote once to get Rex, and it won't solve the problem that you're trying to solve, which is getting people to engage with new BPs. And like I said before, we have examples of other chains where the vote decay happens, and it doesn't spur voter engagement, really. You'll get the same people. The way to spur voter engagement, I think.
What about if we could make
I
some?
sorry, I think that Douglas just went out again from the conversation. He lost the connection or something. I was just going to say that, okay, we know that for getting Rex, it's not that doesn't encourage people. But what about, for example, for retiring from Rex? If you want to to withdraw some funds from Rex.
My issue with these sorts of things is that if you are getting in the way of someone doing something with their money, what you're going to end up with is people are going to go to the vote page and they're just going to vote for the first ones they see, and it's not going to be an actual vote based on anything other than getting past that step as quickly as possible. That would be my concern with that.
Yeah,
I'm just proposing things. Yeah, Jesus.
that's a fair point, and I've actually thought about that before. I think it goes back to the same ideology of people being educated on how it works, and maybe like a better way for the users to learn what each BP does to the chain and what benefit that will eventually do for the chain. I came up with an idea of possibly rewarding some form of badges for the users that vote. Like I voted for 3 months in a row badge or stuff like that, and then the ability that those badges can get you like special access for like some NFTs or things like that, just to kind of engage around the idea of voting and kind of make it something that you want to do. I don't know if anybody else has thought about any other ideas.
I think that
Go
gamifying
ahead.
it would be great, but good.
So I was just gonna bring up, yeah, I don't remember. Can you guys refresh my memory on whether we have an official rule on whether vote buying is allowed or not? Because this does sound, if you're incentivizing people, you do have to be careful about whether that's considered incentivizing people to vote for you. But then again, if you're just saying, how do I say this? If you're not incentivizing them to vote for you, but you're incentivizing them to just vote, then that might be a different rule. I don't know.
Yeah, the idea is that we kind of gotta arrange all together and be like, all right, like let's try this initiative, let's try it out, see if it works. It's gonna be something general for all the BPs, and then if it works, kind of go ahead with it. If it doesn't, then try something else, so that we can eventually build something, some form of voting system that we can stand out from other competitors out there.
I think it also helps to look at the competition, other proof of stake chains, what they're doing to, keep voters incentivized to vote, and and learn from them as well, right? Adopt the best practices. I kind of expressed my
Voter
opinion
engagement.
before. Go ahead, Douglas.
I think Douglas is cutting in and out.
It's a hard problem to solve anyway, so we're not going to solve it 100%. But what I have seen being effective, and I expressed this before, right, is tying voter rewards when they stake, when they vote, when they stake, tying those rewards to performance of validators that they vote for. I have seen this being used on other chains, and it's been a good incentive for people to make right voting decisions. But then again, we're missing some of those pieces in this puzzle, specifically to, time. It comes back to tracking performance, saving it on blockchain somehow, and tying it back to rewards. So it's technical problem to solve.
Yeah, I think right now, I don't know if there's much of a magic bullet for trying to get more engagement or more movement on the BP voting. I mean, my recommendation would just be, if you're actually doing stuff, go into the channels, let people know, come up with a report, quarterly or monthly report. Stuff like that can make a little bit of a difference. But if you're expecting to shoot up quickly, that just doesn't, in my experience, that doesn't always happen that quickly. So things take time. I do think the endpoint that shows who people are voting for, I'm not saying you should, but if you did want to comb through that and you think people are voting for a team that doesn't, let's say that's not registered anymore, there's nothing stopping you from trying to message those people, I would think. Obviously, you don't want to be seen as undercutting people too much, but if someone hasn't been around for weeks or months, I don't see anything wrong with notifying some of their larger voters.
All right, what else we got, Jenna?
There's nothing else on the list. So if anyone has anything else they wanna say, speak now. I
Just
think
wishing everybody a
I mean,
happy year
regarding
and
the
better year ahead for
Yeah.
Telos blockchain.
I think we, should all be really, really proud of the year that we've had and everything that we've accomplished, and individually and as a group. And
Isn't I would, yeah, I'll
Bruce, you keep
type
cutting
it
out.
instead.
But
We
I
did
was
finally
finally
get
get enough BPs to sign the token contract update. Just executed it right now with 2 days to spare. That's good that we got it done. It took a while. We have had the updated system contracts running on testnet for a while. Gave everybody an opportunity and some of our own verification that payments and everything looked to be doing things properly. And so I think, probably not this week because a lot of people are out, but starting beginning of next year, we'll be looking to deploy the latest system contracts out. That should fix the Rex bug, and we'll want to bother everybody probably more aggressively than we did with this token contract update. That token contract update was just to revert back to the vanilla token contract after we had the modified version that let us reduce the max supply. So it wasn't a critical one. But this one will be actually making a lot of people happy and delivering on something we've been waiting for a long time. So just, I guess, keep an eye out for that we, are planning to do that here soon.
What's the timeline for that?
I think I was saying we could, probably not a good idea to do it this week with so many people out. But I think everybody's had an opportunity to test and everything looks good from every bit of feedback I've gotten. So, testnet's been churning away properly, doing payments and everything. We've verified that. Guillermo has. So I'm thinking next week we'll make the multi-sig once everybody's kind of back in the saddle.
What's the potential negative of not doing it sooner?
Potential negative of not doing
Why not do it sooner, and just give it more time to execute? It may actually happen next week, but it could happen sooner than next week. I mean, BPs shouldn't be so far out that they're not even paying attention to what's going on.
That was
just more people around. If I don't like to do things that, if something didn't go right and all of a sudden things aren't working properly and nobody's at the helm because it's still the holidays would be my concern.
Okay.
You don't big changes or things you avoid when you don't have all the chairs full.
Shall we, instead of saying keeping it loose though, then should we say, hey, January 3rd or January 4th or something like that, and have a firm date that everyone can start putting on their calendars and preparing for and
yeah,
what
we could, and we have now with the updated MSIG contract and the EOSAO time, we could put that in there. So we could potentially, I could try to get it out here in the next day or two. And put an expiration date on it. So, it can't be executed until everybody's in their seats, but we could get it ready to execute. So,
yeah.
What day should we plan to execute it? Let's just pick a date.
I would say make it so it can't be executed before Tuesday the 3rd, and set an expectation for everybody that we will execute it by Thursday the 5th. Let's not execute this stuff on a Friday. What would as a straw poll, what would people think about that?
There's only one date we can put in the multi-sig, so you cannot execute it before the 3rd. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes, but but then just socially conveying to everybody that it's our goal to have it done by the 5th.
But if we get the signatures by the 3rd, we'll execute it, right?
Correct. Like it's like putting an end date. Like, so the 3rd would be the beginning date. Hey, no big deal getting it before because we're not going to do it anyway. Make sure you're around. But the goal is but it can be done as soon as the 3rd, and then we would like that. But we're going to start perhaps shaming people for not engaged, not having been signed up by the 5th.
But I can plan on making that multi-sig here in the next 24 hours. I'm not fully around, but I'll
And
get it there, within the next day or so, with a execution date of Tuesday at what time? UTC?
noon Pacific.
Noon Pacific. 8 p.m. UTC or 7, whatever that is. Okay.
Yeah. None of these are actually as important as the actual times are never as important really as setting a time, right? So in my view. So let's do that, and we've got a good chunk of people here. We can spread that through the channels. Hey guys, as early as time A, we can get this going, but we really want to have it done by Thursday. And let's make that happen. And there's I think also that these things tend to do better when we group a few actions. There's a little bit more feeling of immediacy. So if other BPs, if people have other things that they would like the BPs to be voting on, I think having a few things would be good. I've been waiting to get some governance things on chain. I've had them ready for a while, but never really seemed like a great time. I'll push those as well, and then there'll be more reason for people to engage, perhaps. Because it would be great to have that. Are there any things that we need to do in order to get as BPs in order to get EVM 1.5 running on?
No, it's purely indexing. We already have it running on mainnet. No, I mean, if any BPs end up wanting to run the RPC, which the indexer is already public, but I wouldn't run it yet until we get one more change from Igor. Then
Sorry, we're waiting for one more update from Igor.
Yeah, or we're going to do it ourselves.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just the state history reader he's built for us that addresses the memory leak we found. It doesn't handle forks. So I made changes so that it'll run in lib mode. So right now we have mainnet and testnet running up to the lib block. But once it handles forks properly, then we can set that to run off head block and be good. So, but generally, I mean, if BPs want to run this, you just need a state history node with console printing turned on, and that's the same thing we needed for 1.0. And then the rest of the stack is still Elasticsearch and everything. So it's generally Hyperion, but you can index Hyperion. I know, Nicholas, I think you were asking about backups and stuff. You can build Hyperion. The EVM 1.5 runs independent of Hyperion. So it uses Elasticsearch, but you just give it a different index name, and it just writes EVM data. It doesn't store everything. So
is this documented in the GitHub repo about how a BP can go in and add a server and then add it to the load balancer? I think probably that's what may be keeping some people from doing this.
Sorry, motorcycle. The adding of a server to the load balancer is like a pull request, I guess, would be the way to go. We also kind of manually vet them just to make sure it's all like configured properly. Although the new health checks do a pretty good job of automating that. But that repo is, I don't think that one's public, the HA proxy repo. So, but generally it's just let us know you're running it. I mean, that's how everybody's been put in there up until now. There's also, I think, no, that's just the regular Hyperion. So the regular Hyperion now has 2 ports. You have to have a WebSocket port and a HTTP port. But no, the 1.5, it would just be, the code once it's ready, we're going to make the API public as well, which is the Hyperion plugin. And then we'll put those two together in some documentation, which I think JT's already started on or has, or Guillermo, I don't know. It will be well documented, and it already generally is. And then
So
it's just a matter of getting it online. I would say it would be a good idea if anybody's going to run it to have their own kind of, well, JT might disagree, but have their own, public access so people can use that directly. And then if they're going to be behind the load balancer, they would have to expose the direct HTTP port, which is where we have to coordinate, because that's not, then they have to add the load balancer IPs to the firewall so they can get in. So there's a little bit of coordination there, but getting it up and running is the first step. So
yeah, so I think that the first step is really the decision to do so, and I think that we can get more people doing this if it's more clear what the steps are from the outcome. I think it's intimidating for some people who may still have the resources and want to do it, but to know, can they if they're already running a Hyperion, can they just use the Hyperion they're running, or do they have to run a second EVM based Hyperion? I just think there's a lot of questions, and maybe there's somebody on the TCD staff like Nathan or something like that who could pull that together into a 7-step whatever the document, just so people know how to do it. I think that's an impediment.
I was going to ask about that. Just the same that Douglas says. Like, we know that for running an EVM node, an EVM RPC node, you need the Hyperion. But what are the steps to enable that? So it would be really nice if there is like Douglas said, 7, 8 or whatever steps are to activate that possibility.
Yep,
I
it's
think-
really easy, and we've got it well documented. And as soon as we feel comfortable with the data coming out of it and is fully tested, like we've said before, Jesse's going to make the 1.5 repo public, which I think the indexer is already public. Is that what you said, Jesse? Did you already make it public? I don't remember that.
yeah, it's public. I mean, Igor was helping with some
that's
things,
right.
and pulling it down and running on servers is a pain in the ass when it's private. And we're gonna make it public. So instead of setting up deploy keys and all that pain in the ass stuff, I just made it public.
Will people who start now have to re-index or anything? My understanding you say, well, they just have to pull whatever the changes Igor or you may make to fix the memory leak problem and then restart. Is that correct? So there's no reason not to if you have access to that repo?
Yeah, if you have access to it at this point, we have compared blocks with 2.0. We've actually got 2.0 running well enough to import blocks into Silkworm and observe that the block hashes are the same. And we've done that with 70 million blocks now, and they are the same. So that was the one thing that we were wanting to see before we were confident that you weren't going to have to reindex. The memory leak thing, there's a branch that's using Igor's reader, and I think right now the master branch is using the one with the memory leak. So it depends which branch you run. The one with the memory leak just crashes. So if you run it under PM2, it gets restarted like a couple hundred times before it's fully indexed because it crashes every time it runs out of memory. And if you run the version that, the sequential reader version, which is the one that uses Igor's code, you have to turn on the flag that says irreversible only equals true. So it's just, if somebody really wants to get going and get it indexed, just ask, and we'll make sure you get it set up right. At this point, I don't think we're going to have to reindex, but we did have to reindex once in the last week for a piece of missing data. So that's kind of why I haven't encouraged anybody, just because we weren't sure, and then there was one more thing this week that we found, but at this point I'm getting more and more confident. we've been through about 3. Okay, we have to reindex. The block hashes didn't match, and then now that we've seen 70 million blocks with the hash matching, we got a lot more confident. And then, but then there was still one more that we reindexed over the weekend for. So
Yeah. I mean, thanks for the update on that. We are discussing it here, which does mean that there's communication happening, but I would in general say I'm hearing a lot of questions from people. I even have questions myself. So I'd suggest that one of the things that this means is that we doing a better job at communicating these things to people along the way, and that would probably be, you know, really useful. And I think we get more engagement in running the services and whatnot. um I know it's always a challenge, and there's always the attraction of the idea of, oh well, but we're so close, and then once we get there, we're going to you know, then we'll have all the details. And it's always the case with development, that the finish line keeps extending, and why bother telling people stuff and when we're just going to tell them, you know, next week, but then next week turns into next month. So really encourage the TCD to find a way to do more, you know, like creates a better bridge to Telos BPs who aren't necessarily, you know, engaged directly with either the TF or TCD, to be able to get that information.
I would just ask, communicate, because if you're asking me, would I suggest anybody tries to spin up 1.5, the answer is no. I would say just wait. I think JT, you could, what is it, less than 24 hours it takes on a decent host. You know, so once we know you're not going to have to redo it, it's a day, right? So I mean, when we're ready, the call to action will be, it's public, you can do it, here's the instructions, please ask for help. Anybody can run it. We would encourage it if you want to do it. But until then, I don't have much to communicate except, you know, in the future, we'll encourage you to run it. But if so, my question is, are you asking us to communicate call to actions? Because right now we have none, or just communicate so people know like where things are at.
Ongoing status. I'd say ongoing status. So until I asked that question, and I didn't know what you know, that you were not encouraging people to do it, right? So your belief on the status of this might be, oh, it's not good for people to do, but only you know that, unless somebody comes directly to you and says, hey, you know, and people may not want to bug you, or people may want to just look that up on their own. So even the fact that the status is, hey, I'd recommend that you wait for, you know, such and such a time, that is information that can help guide what people do and how they allocate their resources, and that's not being communicated right now. And I think it would be healthier if it was.
Got it.
What does that make sense?
Yeah, I just wasn't sure
because
I don't have a call to action, to use those terms. You know what the communication is. You're just saying keep people updated on progress, so they know more explicitly and frequently that there's nothing to do until there is something to do.
I actually think that would be beneficial. I think there's a lot of questions about it. I even think that should be, I think that would help BPs. I think it would help community members. You know, I think it would help even in the calling for, you know, BP voting, right? Like, are we, hey, people are providing this service and this service. Is that actually a benefit, or has everyone just been told not to do that yet? Or, you know, or is there a desperate need for that, and we should reward those who are doing it? There's just not clear enough information for any participants in the system, outside of the small number that are, you know, very engaged because they're also paid to be on the TCD or TF or something like that. So I think more information is better. I don't want to add to your workload, but my hope is that there's somebody who's tracking these. There's some kind of internal timelines and schedules and whatnot. And if we could externalize those somewhere, some to some level greater than what they are now, I think it would be an improvement for everyone involved.
Yeah, I think so as well. Some form of, I don't know if you call it spokesman or like a preacher, or I don't know if that's like a religious way. Somebody that can basically engage with the community and update them with all this kind of information in a way that is understandable.
Yeah. I have another question, a question on another topic. If we've once we've fully covered this. Anybody? Okay, well, I'm gonna assume that that we fully covered this then. Can you guys hear me, or am I cut out again?
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, so so one of the things I noticed was that recently, I think December 13th, there was a change to what looked like to me a change to the configuration um, of the Telos Foundation election schedule, that took it from a 1 year election schedule that had been in since before the previous election, and changed that to 2 years. Um, I'm pretty sure that's what I see it happening. I don't recall any discussion around that, and and I don't believe I've seen the I don't believe I've seen the charter that was going to be published. Am I just missing those discussions, or has anybody else noticed that as well? And maybe you guys could update the BPs about what is happening there.
Yeah, I have the same issue. I was actually gonna ask about it today, that what is happening with the TF the TF votes elections, because I haven't heard anything about that either.
Yeah. And along those lines, two other things happened that I was surprised about. One is that the control of the Telos core, the TCD's treasury is now down to a 2 of 3 MSIG, with Kirsten, JT, and Jesse. I don't remember any discussion around that. And that seems like, I mean, for example, I've heard Jesse, I've heard you like shit talk places that had that kind of MSIG, and so I'm wondering why you would initiate that. And then also recently I was trying to update the token list at an app stick request, and I realized that the owner permission that I had on the Telos GitHub repos, which I had since the beginning, since I started that. I know we've redone that, but I've always had that, and that has been removed, and it's been removed. Now, that's the only owner of that, and which I think is a centralization risk. So always a benefit to me. Don't just at a time, and I don't see the reason for it. And so just want to be aware of that, and what the centralization, and without informing, even the BDs, unless I missed it, going on from the TF and TCD. So can you guys explain your rationale for those? Either JT.
I can talk to the Telos Foundation vote change or the election change. So we, as the foundation guardians, very early, this would have been, see, the election happened in December. I think we wrote our act, because bylaws didn't really exist for the Telos Foundation when we were elected.
They did, by the way. I mean, they should have, because we
didn't
approved
apply to us at
something.
all. They did not apply to us at all. They were under the guise that the Cayman Islands, like our official representative, had all of the power. We could do nothing. the bylaws were shit. So we rewrote the bylaws, and part of that was extending the election cycle. So with the plan that there would be a roll off of the board members so that there would not ever be a chance that the entire Telos Foundation, like all of the chairs, could be completely replaced. That makes no sense at all. You lose all sense of tribal knowledge if you took an entire board election and replaced every seat. So in order to put in a roll-off schedule, we changed it so that, and this was back in March of 2022, we changed in the bylaws so that there would be a 2-year election cycle. And that after that, when that 2-year election cycle comes up, that we would then have enough time also to change the smart contract so that we could do roll-offs and only do half the board instead of the entire board every time. But yeah, the 2-year election cycle thing was actually changing that timer was an oversight. It should have been done back at the beginning of the year. And when we realized that we were close to elections again, had a little bit of a scramble, honestly, within the Guardian group to go in and change that timer because we forgot to do it.
But was this made
So between March and May, was there any discussion about this?
The discussion, there was, as far as the bylaws are concerned,
any of it, to be honest. I saw that the bylaws were supposed to be posted, and then I heard through the grapevine that the decision was made not to post it, or to post it somewhere that they were not going to draw a lot of attention.
Well, so there's a couple.
Is there
thoughts.
anything to that? Because I'm concerned.
Well, let's get your employee on the call.
No, I think she's celebrating Christmas.
Okay, well, we would all like to be doing that right now.
And it goes beyond. And in the context of this, anything having to do with the TF, it's not my employee, but there are several people. You can't just you can't sidestep that, JT, by mentioning that. So you're a representative of both the TF and the TCD. You're here. You can answer this.
I am answering the question. The discussion was within the Telos Foundation Guardians. I don't know that it has a whole lot to do with the block producers who are supposed to be running the network, not necessarily the people that are, or the foundation that's overseeing the advancement or marketing of the network. So I don't know that this is an appropriate place to have the discussion, but I would like to have all of the Telos Foundation members present in the discussion rather than just 2.
Okay, well, I understand you'd like that. I'd like to poll the other BPs if any of them have heard of this, because the way it does affect the TF and TCD is that we can turn off your ongoing funding. And I know you'll have plenty of funding to keep operating, but the BPs do have that power. You are also going to be asking the BPs to you are aware of this or not, because it seems like there's some things
Douglas,
that
you're breaking up so bad that we can't follow your thought process.
Okay. Well, you need the BPs for funding, so you should be telling the BPs what's going on. You need it. I think that you've missed the fact that you're going to need the BPs to do a major action within the next month or so, for your ongoing funding, and I think you should be more engaged. So, and there's a reason, JT, that you're not an active BP anymore. And that's because of these. That's in part because of these things. So you guys are losing my trust. This is not just a me. This what
Douglas, you're
We-
cutting out again.
We can't
So
hear you
you-
at all anymore, Douglas.
Did anyone else know about this?
Did anybody else know about what?
I think, did anyone else know about the election cycle changing? Is the big question.
I was definitely not aware of it.
But I do think that this is a bigger conversation.
Has anybody actually? This is a much larger conversation than this meeting with only 14 people in it.
It's a good place to start, though. I mean, is this where people are first hearing about it? Because I think you guys should have been the ones who made people first hear about it.
I believe Erica posted it to the Gov channel on the Foundation channel, or vice versa, and forwarded it around. I'm not sure where she first put it, but there's a document drafted and published somewhere.
A Medium article. I'm looking for it right now.
I think that we should actually set up a meeting with all the block producers and the TF together and discuss this all together at a future date.
Yeah, I think it's a bigger conversation when more people are here and every like person or every aspect of this is represented.
Yeah, that's fine. I didn't know if other people were aware of this. I'd been enjoying the holidays as well, so I thought it's possible this had gotten out there, but I watched pretty closely and I haven't heard of any of these or seen any of these posts. And somebody, not my employee, involved with the TCD or to the TF board did tell me that there was some decision to sort of bury it. So
It was on the 12th in the Foundation channel, and there's a Medium article that was shared by Erica, 9:40 a.m. Pacific on the 12th.
okay, so we just need to.
I just got it. I mean, I'm sorry. Nathaniel, you say you watch Telegram religiously. You hearted the response. There's a number of people on this call that hearted the post. So, saying that people weren't made aware and then saying you didn't see it. And then here there are, at least two people on this call who, gave a heart response to the post.
What about the GitHub changes? What about making only one owner for the entire GitHub? When was that discussed?
Do you want me to fully articulate how that decision was arrived at on this
Please.
Anything. I think as somebody who was affected by it,
call? Sure. I'm asking you if you want. To be clear, do you want me to air all the dirty laundry that led to that decision, Douglas?
And the screenshot.
Yeah, if you're ready for that to happen on both sides, absolutely.
I would like to just move on and put everything in the past, but you're digging it up. So
I would
I'm
too, but
asking
you're
what's
making unilateral decisions that make that impossible. You need to think about what you're doing, JT and Jesse.
So
and
let's be clear.
whether you're
Douglas,
centralizing
you
the
quit
chain.
the TCD. You quit the
So?
TCD without any communications with us. You unilaterally quit the TCD, posted a Medium article publicly for everybody to find out what your decisions were about this process. Right?
We've been talking about it for 2 weeks. Everyone,
We
you
couldn't
guys
even
knew
get
that I
you
would. You
on
guys
a
knew.
call to discuss it and come to any formal.
You guys knew.
professional
That's untrue.
closure. Well,
So
we couldn't, as grown-ups, come to a good professional agreement on how to move forward. So
I know because I
you
was the
put
younger
out your
grown-up.
resignation, and everybody found out about it long before us.
No, you knew, guys.
That
If you want to air
deteriorates
that in
faith
this way,
in goodwill.
you guys were. That was
So
100%
then people
on you
came to me and
guys.
said, "What do you do when somebody offboards an organization?" Well, you remove their access. You offboarded
Not
yourself
true.
from the organization.
My
And
access
everybody encouraged me.
was never
Everybody
because I was
encouraged me
in
to remove your
TCD.
access because
Untrue.
as owner of the GitHub, you can do anything you want. You can remove my access. You can destroy everything. So people
Right,
have
but I
concern.
didn't do that.
But
I didn't do that. Jesse.
I didn't do that.
You did that.
I chose I didn't want to do that. But within a day or two, over the weekend of Thanksgiving, when you initiated this process, and people like Kirsten got threatened by you in DM, and you
Kirsten
did
never got
very,
threatened
very
by me.
toxic things to many people. I still did not move to GitHub. But then, that same weekend, that same Thanksgiving weekend, that I had to deal with this, Stephanie Sunshine's GitHub account deleted the Telos Foundation GitHub. The
Stephanie has
original GitHub.
nothing to do with me, and you know that. I filed police reports on Stephanie. Stephanie hasn't.
And it was a coincidence. I don't care.
Okay. Then why are
All
you
I
bringing
know
it up
is that
as relevant?
we had one GitHub, the Telos Foundation GitHub, created for launch. And 2 roughly years ago, I archived that one, and I created a new one called Telos Network that wasn't tied to the Telos Foundation because it made sense. We all agreed. Somehow Stephanie was still owner of the Telos Foundation one and deleted it, and everything went poof in a matter of one click. And that was the wake-up call for me that maybe I should listen to these people that are pointing out when somebody offboards from an organization, they lose access. And so I said, you know what?
That's not true.
You're right.
Well, Jesse,
that's what happens if somebody's an owner of an organization and gets pissed off, or whatever Stephanie decided to do in the same weekend after years of being gone from everything, the same weekend when you're threatening Kirsten and ruining my Thanksgiving weekend and just destroying everything that we've built. I had to see that all of a sudden that happened. That made my spine chill. I had to reach out to GitHub, ask them to undelete it. I don't want somebody stealing the Telos Foundation old GitHub namespace and using it to scam people. I had to get them to undelete it. I had to realize the impacts that can happen when somebody's an owner of a GitHub. And after losing faith in you, your ability to be professional and make the best decisions for Telos and choose to put your own personal ego and agenda ahead of things, that's when I decided that I would protect Telos and protect that GitHub and remove your owner access. And the owner access is held by an email that's part of the Office 365 that JT, that George, that Justin, that anybody can go in and take. So it's not so much centralized. It's just my email that's on it.
I'm hearing a lot of anger and unilateral actions on your side. I mean, this is great that we're talking about in front of the BPs. Everything
and by the way,
is something you've done.
Thanks for texting me on Christmas Eve with a threat telling me that your access on GitHub better be turned on at 9 a.m. the next morning, and that I'm picking a fight that I don't want. That's 100% on me. Thanks for that text. It was a great thing to wake up to on the holiday. Thank you.
Well, you know, it was Jesse. I was telling you that you made a choice to change something without telling me.
Yeah, 2 weeks prior, you didn't even notice it until Christmas Eve, and then all of a sudden I'm getting blown up. You know, my Thanksgiving went down when you filed your resignation, and everybody had to deal with that fallout. And then for Christmas, I had to wonder what you mean by I'm picking a fight that I don't want. I had to wonder what that meant.
Well, you should have talked to me about it before you did it.
I stopped talking to you when you threatened Kirsten and he almost quit.
I never
stopped talking to you in private because of this. I want nothing to do with the way you manipulate people.
Accusation. I never threatened Kirsten. So unless you're willing to back that up,
there are screenshots.
Because that is libel.
You said you will make our lives. You said that you basically said that you're going to make us suffer if we don't go along with your narrative that you published on Medium. And you know what? I didn't do anything publicly. I kept my mouth shut. I didn't do anything. I let your narrative fly. I told nobody about all the problems that we faced.
I said that you guys are picking a bad narrative and it won't end well, not as a threat, just as the fact that you guys are trying to push an untrue narrative, and you should just know. I've been trying through the whole action of dropping out so that you guys could stop making it be so accurate.
We pushed zero narrative. You're the one who published an untrue narrative on Medium that tried to paint yourself in a good picture. There are so many historical things that led up to that it's ridiculous.
No, Jesse, you're wrong about that, and I'm sorry if you feel like I actually tried to put Telos in a good light. I'm sorry that you're unable to.
That's all I want to do, and that's why I didn't say a word. That's why I told Kirsten to just suck it up and move on. Let's move on for the good of Telos. Let's focus on our charter, which is to build things for the network. That's what I tried to do. Right. I tried to do everything for the goodwill of Telos, because that's what fucking matters. That's why we all get paid as VPs. That's why I get paid at the TCD. That's what it all matters. Just what's best for Telos. That's what matters. That's what I've always tried to tell myself. That's how I make my decisions. That's why I took away your GitHub.
You don't get unilateral decisions like this, Jesse, and that's one of the things that has to stop. You don't get, Telos isn't run by what Jesse thinks. It can't be. It's not run by what Douglas thinks. It's not run by what JT thinks.
I socialize everything with the rest of the leadership. It's not unilateral.
Leadership,
leadership until you left.
Can I hop in?
Yeah, I had to leave because the leadership, that's a toxic centralizing. You guys have a problem. You've never been open to that, and it has to change. And I'm going to propose things so it does change, because this idea of JT and Jesse being on both organizations, and I mean, like this, for one thing, the SEC is going to come in and look at this and go, oh yeah, even though you guys have done all this stuff up to now, there's like 5 people who control this whole chain, and you're centralized. I don't want that to happen.
Yeah, JT did mention that we plan on roll-offs, right? But JT did mention we didn't want full rollover the TCD, but we plan on roll-offs, right? So we wanted continuity. We wanted a smooth transition. That's why the last election we tried to keep some of the current board on the board, right?
You really never shared that with anyone in the entire Telos community. And I know you're going to say, well, that's Erica's fault, and it's hard to believe that the actions of a board are all on one person.
No, I never said it was Erica's fault. It was all of us that forgot about it. Nobody realized except me when they finally asked and reminded about the 2-year. I didn't even remember the 2-year. I thought we had elections coming up. When I saw it starting to get discussed, I was like, oh, we got elections coming up. And then somebody pointed out we had a 2-year time frame. I was like, well, the contract's going to trigger an election the moment the thing comes up. And then everybody's like, oh, the board doesn't initiate the vote? I said, no, the contract does. You want to make it 2 years, you got to extend it. That's how it went down.
Yeah, I think that the community had an expectation that whatever was in the contract when they voted was the rule, and that if there was going to be any change to that, there was going to be some communication. There's a lack of communication. There was no communication.
No, Douglas, you're cutting out again.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go. We're 20 minutes over. I can't even. So
sorry to interrupt, but just from a personal point of view, I think that this part of the meeting shouldn't be publicly available to everyone.
I think so too.
Do we agree on that?
I'm different. I'll stand behind everything I say. And I
know. It's just because I think that this is first. I think that this shouldn't have been talked here. I think, from my point of view, it was like a big meeting that has turned on something else, and also that we know that this is recorded, and because, for example, we want the part that we have talked about to be published, so the community.
That's why I asked before the can of worms was opened, Lorenzo. I said, "Do you really want to go here?"
Yeah.
And I was told, "Yeah." And I said, "All right, I'm not going to hold back, and I'm not going to hide anything. I'm going to stand up for myself, and I'm going to stand up for my team and the people I work with very hard every day."
I think not hiding I think it's a great idea that you're not hiding, Jesse. I think the questions I asked were entirely appropriate. This conversation.
They were perfectly valid questions to ask. You're right. And the reasons that they were done and the reason those actions were taken were for things that I think are very disturbing to many people. And people's personal lives have been affected by the things that you've done.
Yeah, they're very disturbing. Being accused of threatening someone with no evidence is very disturbing to me.
So you want me to bring the evidence out? Because I can tell you everything you said to Kirsten was embedded in everybody's memory.
If you're going to bring this all out, Jesse, then yes. Jesse, if you're going to bring this all out, then bring it all out, I suppose. This is a decision you're making. When I left the TC,
I didn't make any decision. I haven't said a fucking word, Douglas. I have not said anything publicly against you at all, point blank, full stop. I didn't do a single thing to bring you down. I let your narrative fly, and you know that. And here on this call, you brought things up.
My narrative is accurate, dude.
What?
My narrative is accurate. If you
No,
want to
it's
talk
not.
about things in narrative, it absolutely
No,
is,
it's
Jesse.
Okay.
I mean,
All right.
you 2 or 3 people say, "Oh, that's not." You guys can conclude and say that that's how you saw it, and perhaps not how you saw it, because our narrative is
Douglas, you attack
their
people.
experience. But
Douglas, you attack people.
You're attacking right now, so
Yeah.
it
Because
doesn't
you pissed me off. Dude, Kirsten wanted to quit. Kirsten has barely stuck around because of what you said.
I don't know why that is. I know that you called for some meeting to have me sort of chastened by the TF. I know that happened, and they ultimately agreed that there was no point. It wasn't the value.
Best
It wasn't
decision for Telos is what we chose. Absolutely.
For whatever reason. I don't know why you thought it was the best decision for Telos for you to try for that. I think that you are putting a lot under this
anybody going
idea
to help
that
stick up for me? Kirsten asked, is anybody going to do anything about the statements made to me in private and about the threats of making things worse if I don't go along with this narrative?
A threat. Will you stop calling it a threat? That's ridiculous, Jesse. And it's ridiculous. It's not a threat. I did point out
if it wasn't a threat,
Should I read it?
it was
right here in front of
threatening.
me. Should I read the
And-
text you sent me on Christmas Eve, Douglas?
The meeting that the TF had was at request of a TF employee in our regular board meeting, where we did discuss implementation and of a code of conduct, which we've written and is currently in like second draft form and will be released, and that we expect not only TF employees but the entire Telos community to abide by. That is what
that'll
was
be
born out
interesting
of
when we
this.
see that. I guess we'll have to look at that.
So, Douglas, let me read this. And I quote, I'm going to log into GitHub at 9 a.m.
Don't read it.
I expect to see my account status recovered to owner by then. You are needlessly picking a fight that you don't want. This is 100% on you. How is that not supposed to make you feel threatened on Christmas Eve, Douglas?
No, it was supposed to point out to you that you had unilaterally chosen to make a change there was no basis for, not inform me or anybody else, not discuss it, and that I would think the best way to go would just be to fix that so it never has to be discussed. Now, I think you interpreted it that way, and I guess I can see how it could be interpreted in that way. I mentioned it when I discovered it, and I discovered it because somebody asked me to merge a pull request. I can do everything I could do in GitHub prior to that, but I could not merge a pull request, which was simply to add a token to the token list. So that's when I discovered it. When I discovered it, I mentioned it to you, and I said, I think this is a mistake.
I don't think that was a mention. I think that was a threat. I think you were trying to force me to do what you wanted by saying that I'm picking a fight that I don't want. And it wasn't unilateral. I said this already, and I don't know if your Wi-Fi connection allowed you to hear it, but many people encouraged me to remove your owner access of GitHub, as is traditional in an organization. When you leave, you lose access. And I said no. And then I decided to do it when, by coincidence or not, Stephanie Sunshine deleted our other GitHub. It was not unilateral, but it was our decision to make. And
no, that's not true. That's not true. Now,
after not the first time it was suggested. So it was not
unilateral. Doesn't matter.
It was a hard one to make. And there was nothing to discuss.
There was no TCD when I created the Telos Foundation GitHubs. It doesn't comment on me to get on any member. The idea is that there's an additional person in case you get hit by a bus.
That's a different GitHub. That was a different GitHub. I created this one.
I know that we have to
migrated to it.
It matters a little to the point I'm making.
And 4 years ago there wasn't a TCD, but things have changed, and we have a pretty robust organization, and we heavily depend on that.
Yeah, I think that's great.
And when you get unilateral decisions like you did,
you don't have another owner, so I think you made the right choice.
When you leave without, when you leave without coming to terms with the organization you're leaving, that's a unilateral decision that impacted all of us and made us all feel vulnerable to whatever further actions you're going to take unexpectedly. So we were all back on our heels wondering what
I had
Doug was
told you
going to do
guys that
next.
was happening. I just didn't tell you the timing of it. Didn't tell you the timing of it because you guys were pushing it to a very acrimonious place, and I thought the best thing was just to say, since you guys,
Get in front of it, tell your story first. I understand what you did. I understand what you did and why you did it, because you wanted to control things and get your story out first, and then tell everybody in DM that they better go along with your story, or it's going to get worse for us. I understand.
I
saw it all happen.
I told you that you were.
I watched it play out. I understand.
Okay. I know certainly because you and JT helped me try to fix some of the problems that Stephanie made when she left, that you knew without a doubt that she had absolutely nothing to do with me or Good Block. So don't use that as an example or try to paint that as somehow I haven't spoken to her, a police report on her.
Like I said, then it was a coincidence.
So you know that.
But it was a wake-up call for me on the power of an owner and how quickly they can remove everything. That's what it was. It was a trigger, whether you had anything to do with it or not. It was a wake-up call to me of how quickly an owner can destroy a GitHub organization. And the fact that, yes, you wield that power.
There's no reason to think that I would do that, Jesse. You did. You removed me.
You're blowing me away at what you're willing to do, Douglas, and I am concerned. That's why I removed the access. I saw no reason that you needed it.
I'm very concerned, Jesse.
So
I'm very concerned about what you and JT are doing. I think that you have the best interest in mind, but I don't think that you're acting really truly for the best interest of Telos. So that's concerning to me.
And now we have a fight, and you're the one fighting, and we're trying to pursue our charter of building things for the network. That's what I try to do every day.
Your charter has never been discussed with anyone. Okay, I think that you do good job as a lead dev as an employee for the TCD. I don't think you do a good job as a leader, and I think that the changing the ability to update the leadership of the TF without mentioning it to anyone is a mistake. And I think that the BPs need to know this, and I think the community needs to know this. And when I say
I'm
that
happy
you're
to talk
picking
to anybody, including you, Douglas, about your concerns about what I do for Telos. I'd prefer to do it in a public forum, not necessarily here, and definitely not in DM. As I said in the text in response, please don't DM me or text me
saw
anymore.
That you didn't want to respond.
And if any other BP here has any concern or questions about what me or anybody at the TCD does, everybody knows where to find me.
Clearly, Jesse, you did pick a fight here. It is 100% on you. And
I'm not fighting. You're the only one fighting, Douglas.
Well, you're the only one yelling.
That's because you opened the can of worms. I've obviously got a lot of emotion, and a lot of stuff has been back pressured since you left because I haven't said a word publicly, because I chose to let everything fly because I felt it was best for Telos. So you opened the can of worms, and I asked you, do you really want to go into that here? And you said yes. And so I am speaking from my heart.
Okay,
that's
fine. But from my heart, I'm actually concerned about your heart because while you
don't worry about my heart.
You're letting things go.
Thanks.
All right, that's fine. Then I'll worry about your behavior, which is that you say you're letting things go, but clearly they're all bottled up and they're going to come out at some point, and they come out when you find everybody.
Yeah, I'm not going to let it leave this channel. I'm going to put it behind me. I said I wanted to put it behind me before, and you asked for it to come up. I'm going to put it behind me after.
Well, I asked reasonable questions, and then you revealed that there were some secret answers to those reasonable questions, and I didn't want to inhibit you. So I think it's good that you said what you said. I think this should be made public. I think warts and all, transparency is always better. The problem is not enough transparency.
If I have to explain why I removed your GitHub, then I have to tell everybody about everything. And I chose not to do that. So I just removed it. You're still a member of the organization. You still have access to stuff. If you want ownership of the token list so you can merge pull requests, just ask. but ownership of the organization is basically carte blanche. It's the superpower, and
Yeah,
don't have a
which I've had for 4 years. So
And
without
this is a
incident.
this is a bigger conversation that we should have at a later date, I think.
Yeah, and
I think we should
told my
schedule
family
that.
we'd be leaving 30 minutes ago to go on a nice hike today. So I'm gonna go.
Yeah.
Hope everybody enjoys the rest of their holiday season and has a great New Year.
So I want to
Alright.
say
Likewise
happy,
to
Have a
happy
great
everyone.
New
holidays,
Year,
Have a
guys.
nice, have a
Bye.
nice
and everyone go do something
New
nice
Year.
with
And
some family
Happy
and
holiday,
people you
guys.
care
Iena,
about.
do we agree on cutting this part from the public
I
release?
honestly don't know what I'm gonna
Just
do.
let's just put it as a vote, and people can actually decide on that vote, and then it can take off from there.
I had already internally decided not to release this recording before that even happened, before everyone else brought it up. But it puts me in a very, to be quite candid, it puts me in a very uncomfortable position, as Douglas is a client of mine. And I'm not really sure how to handle the situation. So it's something that I do want to talk to the rest of my team about. And
Okay.
maybe sit on it and let this pass and let everyone kind of cool down. Our corduroy is closed this week. No one is working. So
Yeah.
it'll be a New Year conversation.
Yeah, I think that it doesn't need to be released just like that. I don't care about what we said before, Jesus and I, about the voting. We know what we need to do and we have talked it. So
Yeah, and to be completely honest, I can't upload anything to YouTube right now because I'm in the middle of nowhere, Saskatchewan. So even if I wanted to, I can't upload it until I'm back in Toronto until mid-January. So I'm personally don't want to upload it. I don't, but that's not.
I think that no
want-
one from here wants this uploaded. I think
It's not my decision. Yeah, it's
just as an opinion. That's it.
no, I appreciate that.
Just to let it on the record.
I appreciate that, and I definitely, it's something I'm going to think about on January 3rd, and
Perfect.
I'm going to go play some crib with my mom, and I should go do something fun. And I just want to appreciate everyone for being here. And we get into this because we're all so passionate about Telos, and I think it's also a little bit of like end of the year, everyone needs a break, and it's hard to get that in crypto. And
agreed. Sorry that got messy, guys. We've been living this for about 2 months.
Yeah,
dealing with just internal stuff with Douglas's planned / unplanned departure. So
you have said it's internal things.
It is, and it is things that we had somewhat decided to not make public in order to, one, protect the network, and also protect a little bit of Douglas's reputation. But it is what it is. So we'll deal with it in the new year.
Perfect.
Okay.
yeah,
Then
you guys.
have a
January
nice
3rd,
end of
everybody.
holidays and happy New Year to everyone.
Yep. You guys too.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.